Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack complex ideas from various sources, giving you a shortcut to understanding some really fascinating material.
And today, we're really getting into the weeds with Edmund Husserl.
We certainly are. We're tackling a concept that's fundamental to his phenomenology, but often, well, let's say debated, the life world, the Lebenswelt.
Right. And this isn't just about defining a term. There's a long-standing interpretive battle here. You know, the sort of standard view for a long time was that the life world was something Husserl came up with late in his career.
Like in the 1930s with the crisis of European sciences?
Yeah, and that view often suggests it was maybe even a bit inconsistent with his earlier work, perhaps a kind of philosophical break.
Which, if true, would fundamentally change how you read his entire philosophical project. Big implications.
Huge. But the sources we're digging into today argue for the complete opposite. They make a really strong case for what they term conceptual monism.
Conceptual monism.
Yeah.
Unpack that.
The idea is basically that the core philosophical structure underpinning the life world was actually there all along, consistently, throughout Husserl's career. It just, well, it went by different names at different times.
So not a break, but a continuous development under various labels. We're talking about a single, unified idea running from, the early 1910s right through to the late 30s.
That's the core argument we're exploring. And to really establish this monism, to show the concepts stay the same philosophically even when the words changed, we need to pin down its essential features.
The non-negotiables.
Precisely. There are three defining characteristics that are always present, inseparable, across all the relevant texts. First, the life world is a priori. Second, it's transcendent. And third, it's co-given.
A priori, transcendent, and co-given.
Get those three, and you've got the blueprint. This framework, this tripartite structure, is what Husserl argues provides the necessary, stable foundation for all knowledge, all science, all culture. It's the ground beneath our feet, philosophically speaking.
Okay, that's a compelling setup. Let's start with that historical puzzle then. If the idea was so consistent, this conceptual monism, why keep changing the name? Emwelt, Erfahrungswelt, Lebenswelt. Why the different terms over the decades? Seems confusing.
Well, you've hit on exactly why the break theory gained traction in the first place. Interpreters saw the different names, especially the late emergence of Lebenswelt, and, well, they assumed a shift in the underlying concept.
A reasonable assumption on the surface, maybe.
Perhaps. But the monism thesis argues that this misses the deeper point. The problematic itself, the need to account for this basic everyday world we live in before we start abstracting it for science, that problem was on Husserl's radar much, much earlier.
So the conceptual monism view says the name changes were more about refining the label, not inventing a new idea.
Exactly. It's about finding the best term to capture this pre-scientific foundational reality he was always grappling with. Let's trace that naming evolution. It makes it clearer.
Okay, walk us through the timeline.
Right. So the core issue, this distinction between our everyday sort of unthinking engagement with the world, the natural attitude, and the more reflective analytical stance, like in science, Husserl was lecturing on that distinction as early as, say, 1906, 1907.
So the seed was planted early.
Definitely. But the concept itself, with these three key characteristics we mentioned, a priori, transcendent, co-given, that really starts solidifying around the early 1910s. If you look at the manuscripts for Ideas 2, which he was working on around 1912,
yes,
he introduces the concept, but he calls it the surrounding world.
The Umwelt.
Umwelt. Okay, that suggests something immediate, personal, the world right around it.
Precisely. It emphasizes that direct, lived relationship. Then jump forward to the mid-1920s. He's giving major lectures like First Philosophy and writing Phenomenological Psychology.
And the term changes again.
It does. Now he tends to call it the world of experience, the Erfahrungswelt. This name highlights its role as the reservoir of everything we live through and experience directly.
Makes sense. Welt to Erfahrungswelt, still focused on lived experience. Right. It wasn't until his final period, the 1930s, especially in the work that became The Crisis, that he really settles on the term that stuck. Life world. Lebenswelt.
Lebenswelt. The term most people associate with him now.
Exactly. But the crucial point, according to the monism argument, is that the philosophical job the concept was doing remained consistent throughout all these phases. Scholars like Fulsdal and Soa, for instance, point out that the idea of needing a science of this foundational world was present way back in his Göttingen lectures around 1910-11.
Even before Umwelt was the main term in Ideas 2.
Right, so the label evolved, but the underlying structure, the thing being labeled, didn't fundamentally change. Whether it's Umwelt, Erfahrungswelt, or Lebenswelt, it's always described in the same core ways.
Such as?
It's always presented as being already there, just available to us. It's universal, the same basic structure for everyone. It's stable, providing a basis for predictable relationships. And crucially, it's prior to the objective sciences. It's the necessary foundation before you can even start doing physics or math in a meaningful way.
Okay, so the takeaway for someone trying to get to grips with Husserl is pretty significant. Don't just memorize the definition of Lebenswelt from the crisis.
Right. You need to see it as the culmination of a lifelong philosophical effort. It's about recognizing this single, consistent structure Husserl was trying to map out from his early career onwards, this pre-scientific foundation of all human experience and knowledge. How was the world given to us before we start carving it up with scientific concepts?
Which leads us neatly to the first of those three defining characteristics you mentioned. The life world is a priori.
Yes, a priori.
Now, that's a heavy philosophical term, usually means knowledge that's independent of experience, right? Necessary truths, like in logic or math. How does Husserl apply that to something as, well, seemingly messy and experience-based as the life world?
That's the key question. We need to be clear on what a priori means here. Husserl is definitely building on the Kantian tradition. For Kant, a priori knowledge has two defining features, necessity and strict universality.
Necessity meaning it couldn't be otherwise. You can't even conceive of it being different.
Exactly. Its negation is unthinkable. And universality means it admits absolutely no exceptions. It holds true everywhere, always, completely independent of any specific empirical observation.
Okay, so how does the life world, the world of everyday experience, meet those incredibly strict criteria?
It meets them because, Husserl argues, the life world possesses a pure universal structure. Beneath the flux of specific experiences, there's an underlying invariant framework.
A universal structure. What does that actually do? What's its function?
Think of it as the essential scaffolding of reality as we experience it. It's a substratum of invariant structure. This structure is what guarantees the basic regularity and predictability of the world. It's the fundamental condition that makes any coherent experience possible in the first place.
So, without this a priori structure,
the world would be utter chaos. If the basic rules of how objects behave in space and time weren't universally fixed, then the more specific laws of physics or geometry, which depend on that basic stability, would just be arbitrary nonsense. This a priori structure ensures the world holds together.
But wait, the world is always my world, right? Experienced by me, from my perspective. How does that subjective angle fit with this idea of a rigid, necessary, universal structure? Isn't there a tension there?
That's where Husserl's phenomenological approach gets really interesting. He fully acknowledges that the world is always a world for consciousness, a world I'm aware of. The subject, the ego, and the surrounding world are, as the sources say, inseparably referred to each other.
Okay.
But, and this is crucial, this relationship isn't arbitrary or purely subjective. It's governed by laws of essence. My consciousness can only relate to the world in ways that are constrained by the world's own inherent universal structure.
Can you give an example?
Sure. I can direct my consciousness towards an object. I can intend it, perceive it, think about it. But I can't, for instance, coherently intend or perceive a logical contradiction as an object existing in the world, like a square circle. The essential structure of spatiality and logic prohibits it. My consciousness is bound by these essential laws.
I can see how that works for physical things. Like if I drop this pen, gravity applies. That seems necessary and universal. But Husserl extends this a priori nature to things like ethical judgments or aesthetic feelings, doesn't he? That feels much more variable. My evaluation of a piece of art seems purely subjective.
It feels more variable, and Husserl acknowledges that predictability varies in degree.
Yeah.
Physical relations, like your pen falling, operate under highly deterministic laws. Physical, mathematical, logical laws give us strong predictability.
Right.
Ethical or aesthetic relations, say, how we value a piece of music or a moral action, have a much lower degree of predictability on the individual level.
We don't all like the same music.
Exactly. So where's the a priori necessity there?
The necessity lies not in whether you like the song, but in the kind of relation possible. According to the laws of essence governing that object, they are not arbitrary.
Take the music example again. The essence of a piece of music, its fundamental nature, is such that it can support values like beauty or perhaps evoke feelings of sadness or joy. It belongs to the realm of the aesthetic or the emotional.
Okay.
But its essential structure prohibits it from being judged as true or false in the logical sense. A song can be beautiful or jarring, but it can't be factually incorrect in the way a mathematical statement can. Its very essence dictates the kind of judgments and values appropriate to it. That's the a priori constraint.
So the life world isn't just a collection of random facts and feelings. It's structured by these necessary possibilities, these essences. This sounds like we're moving beyond just describing experience and into grasping something more fundamental, the eidos, the essence itself.
We absolutely are. To access this necessary a priori structure, Husserl says we need to adopt the phenomenological attitude and perform the eidetic modification. This involves the epiche, suspending our judgment about whether things factually exist.
To see the things themselves, the pure essences.
Exactly. And this seeing isn't like normal visual perception. It's a categorical seeing. It's about grasping the universal type.
Okay, but how do I know I'm grasping a universal essence and not just, my own ingrained habits or cultural biases? Categorical seeing sounds a bit mysterious.
It's a fair challenge. Husserl's method for ensuring rigor here is eidetic variation. Let's use a classic example. The essence of red.
Okay.
I could see a red fire truck, a red apple, or a red dress. Empirically, these are just three different things that happen to be red. Now, in my imagination, I start varying these examples. Imagine the apple turning green. Imagine the fire truck blue. Imagine the dress fading to pink. I mentally play with the object, changing its properties.
Trying to see what has to remain for it still to be an instance of red?
Precisely. What is the invariant core? What must be present for any of these things to qualify as red? Through this imaginative variation, I strip away the accidental features and isolate the necessary unchanging core. The essence of redness, its ideality. That's what I grasp through eidetic insight.
So the essence is the universal that persists through all possible variations.
That's the idea. And this essential structure, grasped through eidetic variation, is a priori. Its validity precedes any particular factual instance of red. It's the necessary condition for anything to be red at all.
And this is the stable a priori foundation Husserl thinks objective science needs but often forgets.
Exactly. This brings us to his famous critique in The Crisis. He saw European science as being in crisis precisely because disciplines like logic and mathematics had started to see themselves as totally autonomous, completely self-grounded.
They treated their own a priori truths, logical laws, mathematical axioms as absolute and independent of the experiential world.
Yes, and Husserl called this naive. It's naive because it fails to investigate its own foundations. The universal objective a priori of logic and math is certainly real and necessary. But, Husserl argues, it's not the ultimate foundation. It must itself be grounded in the even more fundamental pre-logical universal a priori of the life world.
The basic structures of how we perceive objects, space, time, causality. These come first.
They have to. Before you can formulate logical propositions about objects, you need the pre-logical essential structures that make stable object perception possible in the first place. You can't have geometry without a fundamental, pre-scientific grasp of spatiality.
So we need an ontology of the life world, a study of being as it appears in this foundational realm.
That's what Husserl calls for. We need to map out the hierarchy of these essential structures, not just the physical and logical ones, but also the structures governing value, emotion, sociality. The whole web of the life world a priori constitution. This a priori nature is the bedrock.
Okay, that lays out the a priori characteristic really clearly, but it leads us straight into what feels like the biggest tension. We're talking about consciousness, experience, the world for me. Yet the second characteristic you listed is that the life world is transcendent.
Yes, transcendent, mind independent.
How on earth does that work? If phenomenology starts with consciousness as the absolute field where everything appears, how can the world simultaneously be outside of consciousness, independent of it? This sounds like a flat-out contradiction.
It is the central paradox of Husserl's whole system, and why this characteristic needs careful handling. Let's get the terms straight first. In Husserl's language, immanent refers to things that belong to the very stream of consciousness itself.
Like consciousness itself, my own thoughts, feelings.
Exactly. The pure ego, the flow of internal time consciousness, those are immanent. They are given absolutely and necessarily. Transcendent, then, is everything that goes beyond the limits of that individual stream of consciousness.
So physical objects.
Physical objects, yes, but also abstract things like essences, mathematical truths, and crucially, the conscious experiences of other people, other egos, all transcendent.
Okay. So a transcendent thing, like this table, isn't part of my stream of consciousness itself. How is it given to me then?
It's given through appearances, through profiles or perspectives. Husserl calls this adumbrated being, I never perceive the whole table absolutely all at once. I only ever see one side, one angle, under certain lighting.
Right. The hidden sides are co-intended but not directly seen.
Precisely. And because it's given through these partial shifting appearances, the transcendent object is always, in principle, accidental and relative. It might not exist. I could be hallucinating the table. Its existence isn't absolutely guaranteed in the way my own consciousness is.
Okay, so far so good. But here's the crunch. Husserl is famous as a transcendental idealist. He insists consciousness is the ultimate source of all meaning and validity. Yet you're saying the world, the object, is transcendent, mind-independent. Isn't that just trying to have it both ways?
It seems like it. But Husserl makes a critical distinction. He's a transcendental idealist, yes, meaning consciousness is the necessary condition for anything to be known or validated as real. But he explicitly rejects ontological idealism.
Ontological idealism being the view that reality is literally created by the mind, like Bishop Berkeley.
Exactly. Husserl is not saying the mind creates the table. That would lead straight to solipsism, the idea that only my own mind is sure to exist.
So how does he avoid that? If consciousness validates everything but doesn't create it, what does constitution mean for him?
This is absolutely key. As interpreters like Philosopher stress, for Husserl, constitution is not creation. It's the process by which consciousness confirms or validates the sense and existence of something as being objectively real and transcendent.
So the table is genuinely out there, independent of my mind.
Yes.
But its out-there-ness, its objective reality, only gets confirmed and made meaningful through the structures of my consciousness.
You've got it. Consciousness is the necessary field in which the transcendent object appears and is legitimated as transcendent, as mind-independent.
Okay, that helps resolve the apparent contradiction. And this connects back to the a priori structure.
Absolutely. The existence of any single particular table might be accidental. It could burn down. It might never have been built. But if it exists, its possibility, its structure, having spatial extension, color, permanence, interacting causally, is governed by the universal life world a priori. Those essential structures are necessary and transcendent.
So the essences are transcendent and guarantee the object's potential structure, even if the object itself is contingent.
Exactly. That invariant structure, the realm of essences, provides the stability and identity. The table maintains its properties according to these mind-independent essential laws, whether I'm looking at it or not. My lived experience is just my access point to this transcendent realm of essences that shapes reality. That's how Husserl tries to secure objectivity within a phenomenological framework.
It guarantees the world isn't just my dream. The rules are independent of me.
Right. The table's shape, its resistance when I touch it, its potential movements, they follow predictable, transcendent rules.
And you mentioned this transcendence applies broadly, even to time. That's a huge concept to make transcendent.
Time is maybe the most fascinating example of this interplay between immanence and transcendence. Think about it. Each of us has our own inner sense of time, right? Our subjective temporality, the flow of our own consciousness, memories, anticipations, that's immanent.
Okay.
But every act, every perception also occurs within objective time, the shared public chronological order of the world. The clock on the wall, the sequence of historical events, that seems external, transcendent.
So are they two separate time systems running in parallel?
Husserl argues no. He insists that subjective and objective time are essentially correspondent. They form a single, unified order of time. My inner flow is necessarily structured in a way that maps onto and participates in the transcendent temporal order of the world.
So my immanent experience of time is already interwoven with the transcendent world time.
Yes. Immanence and transcendence are bound together here through essential laws of correspondence. It's another way the subjective is anchored in the objective, structured reality.
Wow. Okay. So the life world's transcendent nature, grounded in these a priori essences, prevents everything from collapsing into just my own mental states. It guarantees a stable, mind-independent reality structured by universal laws.
Precisely. Even though we access it through consciousness, its fundamental structure transcends consciousness.
And this provides the perfect bridge to the third and final characteristic. If the world is structured by these universal transcendent essences, then it must be the same structured world for everyone, which means it must be co-given.
Exactly. Co-given or intersubjectively given. This is absolutely vital. It addresses the question, how does my world become our world? The life world isn't just my private stage. It's the same world for all conscious beings who inhabit it. This sharedness is essential for everything from basic communication to complex scientific collaboration.
Okay, so how do we get there? Phenomenology starts with the individual ego, my consciousness. How does Husserl bridge the gap to recognizing other consciousnesses, the alter ego, and this shared world?
The bridge, fundamentally, is the body. But Husserl makes a crucial distinction here, one we have to grasp: the difference between Körper and Leib.
Körper and Leib, the physical body versus the lived body.
Right. Körper is the body seen as just another physical object in the world. It has mass, extension, it can be measured, dissected. It's the body as a thing.
Like how a doctor might view it.
Precisely. Leib, on the other hand, is the body as I live it from the inside. It's the center of my perceptual field, the instrument through which I feel and act, the source of sensation. It's my 0 point of orientation in the world.
My Leib is me in the world. So how does my Leib help me recognize another consciousness?
Through a process Husserl calls empathy, which he understands specifically as the representation of the alter ego. It works like this. I perceive another person's body out there in the world as a Körper.
Okay, I see a physical body similar to mine.
Right. And because that Körper moves and behaves in ways analogous to how my own Leib moves and behaves when I act consciously, I perform an act of pairing. I recognize its fundamental similarity to my lived body.
And because I know my lived body, Leib, is animated by consciousness.
I appresent, meaning I co-intend or project the existence of a similar conscious life, a similar Leib, animating that other Körper. I don't directly perceive their consciousness, but I apprehend it through this bodily analogy.
So empathy isn't just feeling what they feel, it's recognizing that they feel that they have a conscious perspective on the world.
That's the core of it. And through this appresentation, I recognize not just another consciousness, but another consciousness oriented towards the same world, sharing the same fundamental co-given horizons. We're both directed towards the one identical, transcendentally structured life world.
This leads to a potential distinction. Is there my own personal world and then a separate shared world?
Husserl, particularly as interpreted by Gerd Brand, argues strongly against seeing them as two separate worlds. Brand emphasizes something quite radical. Intersubjectivity is the constitutive element of the life world, not the ego.
Wow, okay, so the sharedness comes first.
In a way, yes. While each of us has what you could call a selfish surrounding world, the world immediately centered on my Leib, my personal perspective, this isn't separate from the communicative surrounding world, the collective dimension. The personal world is just the nucleus, the core perspective within the larger, fundamentally shared life world.
So it's the same single life world, just accessed from multiple intersubjectively linked viewpoints.
Exactly. The world is co-given from the outset. Its very structure anticipates and includes the presence of other subjects.
And this shared stage allows for more than just bumping into each other physically. It enables meaningful interaction, evaluation, motivation.
Absolutely. Our relationship with the objects and people in the life world isn't just causal. It quickly becomes one of motivation. Objects aren't just inertly there. They speak to us. They solicit responses.
How do you mean they speak to us?
Objects intrude on the subject, as one source puts it. They attract our attention. They stimulate us. This stimulation can be theoretical, like a puzzling phenomenon inviting us to understand it, aesthetic, like a beautiful sunset inviting contemplation, or practical, like a tool inviting us to use it, or food inviting us to eat. The world is constantly calling us to engage.
So the world isn't passive, it's actively soliciting responses from us within this shared space. But if the world is constantly intruding and motivating us, where does our freedom, our agency come in? Are we just puppets responding to stimuli?
No, and this is crucial for understanding the life world as a human world. Husserl distinguishes between passive determination and active reaction. We are passively determined in many ways. Feeling hunger, for example, is a passive determination arising from my bodily state within the world. I don't choose to feel hungry.
Right, it just happens.
But the subject retains the freedom to actively react to that passive determination. I might feel hungry, but I can choose to go on a hunger strike for political reasons. In doing so, I override the simple biological urge and assign a different kind of meaning, a spiritual or axiological, value-based sense to that experience.
So freedom lies in how we take up and respond to the world's solicitations and our own passive states.
Precisely. As Ninan points out, this capacity for assigning geistige, spiritual or intellectual sense, allows us to shape our engagement with the world. We don't just react. We interpret, evaluate, and act according to chosen values and goals. The life world isn't just a physical or biological environment. It's a thematic world of intentional life lived within a community, constantly being shaped by these acts of meaning-giving.
And because this shared world is underpinned by those stable, necessary a priori structures we talked about earlier, and because it's transcendent and co-given to all of us, that's what makes collective human endeavors possible.
That's the ultimate payoff. The life world, being stable, harmonious in its essential structure, not always in fact, universally structured and co-given, provides the necessary foundation for communal life. It makes shared understanding and communication possible.
And communication is the basis for, well, everything collective.
Right. Culture, tradition, shared practices, and significantly for Husserl's critique, objective science. Science is simply one specific, highly refined way that a community investigates this shared life world. It does so by systematically trying to eliminate the merely subjective variations in perspective to arrive at universally valid objective truths.
But Husserl's point is that science should never forget that its objective findings are ultimately derived from and must make sense within this more fundamental, shared, pre-scientific life world.
Exactly. Even the most abstract scientific concept is, as he puts it, pre-thematically related to subjectivity. It originates in and must ultimately refer back to the world as lived and experienced intersubjectively. This stable, co-given world is the ultimate ground for everything.
So the crisis Husserl diagnosed wasn't really a crisis in science itself, but a crisis of philosophy, forgetting this foundational life world, forgetting the ground upon which science stands.
That's a great way to put it. Science became unmoored, forgetting its roots in the everyday pre-scientific world with its essential structures and inherent values. The life world a priori, transcendent, and co-given is that necessary anchor.
This has been a really thorough deep dive. Let's try to crystallize the main argument we've explored from these sources. We started by challenging the idea that the life world was a late, possibly inconsistent concept in Husserl.
Right. Instead, we've built a case for conceptual monism. The argument is that the core idea, this foundational pre-scientific world, was a consistent preoccupation for Husserl throughout his career, just under different names like Umwelt and Erfahrungswelt, before settling on Lebenswelt.
And the consistency of this concept rests entirely on it always having three inseparable characteristics.
Absolutely. You have to be a priori possessing a necessary universal structure of essences that guarantees regularity and makes experience possible. It has to be transcendent, genuinely mind-independent, ensuring objectivity and saving the view from solipsism, even though it's validated in consciousness. And it must be co-given, fundamentally intersubjective, the shared stage for communication, culture, and science.
Take away any one of those three pillars, and you're not talking about Husserl's life world anymore.
You're talking about something else entirely. The philosophical significance here is profound. It's this tripartite structure, particularly the a priori essences, that stabilizes reality. It makes a shared objective world possible, despite the variations in individual subjective experience.
It grounds communication, knowledge, science, culture, everything.
And Husserl's lifelong project, seen this way, was a continuous effort to combat the veiling of this life world, the way specialized sciences can make us forget this fundamental ground. His call was always to return to the things themselves, the pre-scientific realities, to put science and culture back on a firm footing, connected to our actual lived existence and its inherent values.
Which brings us to a final thought, a reflective question for you, the listener, to take away from this. Husserl urged a return to this pre-scientific essential ground. So the question is, what would it mean for you today to consciously try and suspend your reliance on purely objective, scientific, or technological ways of knowing the world for a moment?
To try and bracket out those frameworks.
Exactly, and instead try to access that more fundamental, pre-logical, perhaps value-laden axiological ground upon which your everyday actions, judgments, and knowledge are actually built. What are the foundational essences, the taken-for-granted structures of your own life world that might be shaping everything you do, perhaps without you even realizing it?
A challenging question, digging into the foundations of our own experience. Worth pondering.
Definitely something to think about. We'll leave it there for this deep dive. Join us next time for another exploration.